So, the first pillar that we're going to address in your health is your gut health and your diet. And your gut health is central to your health. And in fact, in functional medicine, there's a saying that says, when in doubt, treat the gut. Because if your gut isn't healthy, then you are not going to be healthy. Your gut determines your health in a big way. Hippocrates, who is considered the father of medicine, he said almost 2,000 years ago that he said all disease begins in the gut. And we're only now, like mainstream medicine is only now starting to realize like how true that is. There's a lot of studies that show how your gut health is very much connected to your health and your well-being. Not just your physical health, but also the way you think, the decisions you make, your mood. Like a lot of that is determined in your gut. Did you know that serotonin, which is Serotonin is the neurotransmitter that helps you feel like happy and just kind of balanced. It's what, if you've ever been on any antidepressant or anti anxiety medication, those medications are all working on serotonin to increase it. To help balance your mood and help you feel better, right? Well, we always assumed that most of that must be in your brain or in your uh, nervous system. But the reality is that 95% of your serotonin is actually in your gut and produced in your gut. And it's produced by your microflora even. They determine its production. And when I'm talking about microflora, I'm talking about all those living organisms that are in your gut. And when I'm talking about your gut, just to clarify, I'm talking about everything that's from your mouth down your esophagus, into your stomach, down into your small intestines, large intestines, and then out through your rectum. That whole piping system is considered your gut. So in your gut, we have all of these living organisms, like tons of them. In fact, they outnumber us, like our cells, 10 to 1. So they've got us beat. And these living organisms determine a lot of our health. It's a very symbiotic relationship. They produce a lot of stuff that our bodies need, and we've shown that if your microflora is out of balance, then it does lead to like inflammation and medical problems. So your gut flora is super important. And if you have dysbiosis, which is just a big fancy word for just saying your gut flora is out of whack, then it can create a lot of problems. It can cause leaky gut, which we'll talk about, and it causes pro-inflammation and disease. So I always tell people, I'm like, your gut flora. I mean, that's why we talked about like when you were a baby. If you were a vaginal birth versus a C-section. If you're a vaginal birth, you as a baby get shoved out a very tiny hole and you're just getting all of that flora from your mother, all of that good healthy flora from your mother as you're getting pushed out that little hole, right? Versus a C-section, you are very sterile environment. Everything is extremely sterile. You're brought into the world and then you're put on a sterile bed, and you don't get any of that microflora to populate your gut appropriately from the get go. So that's why a C-section versus a delivery can make a big difference. And then also breastfed versus bottle fed. Breast milk has a lot of probiotics in it. It has its own microbiome. And so babies that are breastfed, they get all of that in their milk, and that also helps establish a good healthy gut flora from the beginning. Plus, you're up against your mom's breast, you're getting in all of that bacteria from her skin, you're just taking in, it's not a sterile environment versus when we have a bottle fed child, I don't know why, but we feel the need to use distilled sterile water and we sterilize the bottle and everything is extremely sterile. And so they're getting the nutrition from the milk or from the formula, but they're not getting any microbes. Their gut. So especially a baby that has been C-section delivery and then bottle fed, your gut is going to take a hit from the beginning with that. Also, we live in a very sterile world. We live in a world that is very like in the Western world anyway, we're like, don't touch my baby until you've sanitized your hands. Like everything has to be sterile. And I get it, like disease transmission, I understand that, but I think it's to the point where, kids just aren't allowed to like get dirty. They're not allowed to eat dirt, if you will. Like all that stuff that gets that exposure to the environment and really helps a healthy microbiome gut flora to form. Your gut flora is sort of established in the first few years of life. And so, if you miss out on all those exposures, we do see that those people do tend to have more gut issues and health problems down the road. Antibiotics, that's a huge problem, becoming more and more of a problem, like way over prescription of antibiotics. There's a lot of reasons for that, which I won't get into, but especially, I mean, there's studies that show that babies that if they get antibiotics, like during delivery, like a mom who has a GBS positive or something and has to have antibiotics, or, develop some sort of infection during delivery, those babies and babies that also, for whatever reason, have to get antibiotics really early in life, there's studies that have shown that those babies have a higher amounts of healthcare problems later on in life. And then just the overuse of antibiotics. If you had to have a lot of antibiotics as a kid for ear infections or UTIs, like that's all going to take a hit on your microflora in your gut, which is going to throw it out of whack. Okay. And we've got bad guys and we've got good guys in our gut. And if we have more of the bad guys, then they're going to cause a lot of problems downstream. So these guys are very pro inflammation. They cause your mood to be out of whack. They're not allowing you to produce serotonin like you should. They're going to influence your decisions. They're very like irritable, and they'll make you feel irritable and out of whack and cause problems, right? Whereas these flora are more balancing, they're mood calming, they help you sleep better, they help you make better decisions, they're going to lead to health downstream. So we're trying to get the gut balanced in a way where you have all your good flora that you need in the amounts that you need, and so you can be healthy and stable. And we can influence the gut in a lot of different ways. One of the easy ways is through diet. And of course, we know that there are some common things that for everybody, like vegetables are good for everybody and sugar is bad for everybody. Like, I don't care who you are. But there's a lot of things that are very unique to each person. Like everybody is uniquely different. Everybody's genetics are uniquely different. Everybody has different sensitivities and intolerances. And those are going to determine what foods are good for you and what foods aren't good for you. And that's something that nobody can tell you. You can do allergy testing, and we do some of that, but that also doesn't not always give you an accurate picture. Sometimes the best thing you can do is an elimination diet, where you take out, potentially problematic foods for a certain amount of time, and then you reintroduce them one at a time and you see how your body responds. And that'll be a separate video explaining that in more detail. I think that is something that everybody should do at least once in their life, because my own experience with it, like I was actually the person who would kind of roll my eyes at, not at them, but, internally, like when somebody was like, I'm gluten sensitive, or I'd just be like, oh gosh, people just eat food. Well, the first time I did an elimination diet, which the first one I did was Whole30, I realized that I'm like, oh, this chronic pain that I've had in my side for over 7 years that I just thought was like a rib out and me working out hard or something, that was actually just related to to food. That my body does not like certain food, and I actually connected that with gluten. I realized that gluten actually makes me achy. So I am now that person who is like, I'm gluten sensitive and wants the gluten-free item at the restaurant. But like I also, had irritable bowel syndrome my entire life, and I just thought it was normal. If you had asked me if I had any problems, I'd be like, no, I'm totally healthy. I have no issues whatsoever. But it wasn't until I experienced what normal felt like that I was like, oh, actually, yes, I did have problems. Sometimes you don't realize how good you can feel until you feel good. And then you realize, like, oh, there's more to this story. So, doing an elimination diet where you can see how your body can feel, with taking all those foods out and then figuring out what foods are working for you and what foods aren't is essential for helping you optimize your gut health. Because if you're eating foods, like for me, when I eat gluten or I eat dairy, like it causes inflammation and irritation in my gut, which then leads to leaky gut, which I'm going to have another video about, which then leads to a whole downstream inflammatory response and inflammation in my body and causes a lot of problems. So it's super important that you figure that out. And for me, now it's so much easier for me to say no to, those breadsticks, or no to, that yummy cream cheese, whatever that I love, because I know how it affects my body now. So that's a big part of restoring your gut as well. And also just know that your gut is influenced by what you're eating. So not just by irritation and inflammation to things that your body doesn't like, but also the foods that you're giving it, you're feeding those microorganisms in your gut. And this is an analogy that I actually got from a dietitian that I met at a conference, but whatever you feed the most, those gut flora are going to grow. So like if somebody is on the standard American diet, which is terrible, first of all, but it's, full of eating out and burgers and fries and chips and crackers and pizza and, quick, fast, easy, processed, high sugar. Like the average American eats like 17 teaspoons of sugar a day. Like 100 years ago, I think it was like 5 teaspoons a day. And now it's like 17 teaspoons of sugar a day, which is disgusting. But if you start counting up the sugar, the grams of sugar, you start to see why very quickly, because there's so much sugar in everything. But so the gut flora that like all that stuff, like that sugar, like all those processed foods, they're going to be thriving. They're going to be growing real big, and they're going to be driving your cravings. They're going to be like, feed us, feed us, feed us all the time, right? And so you're going to constantly crave those chips and those crackers and those, that pizza and donuts and whatever else, right? And so, and a lot of times the person on the standard American diet, they don't usually eat that many vegetables, maybe some fried okra, which I don't think really counts, or some canned green beans, or, something, but very few. And so the flora that like that stuff, they're going to be like pretty wimpy, and they're going to be like, they don't really have a say, because these guys are overpowering them. And as we talked about, these guys are pro-inflammatory. They're balance your mood, and they cause just disruption and inflammation and disease, right? Well, if you can start to retrain your body, you can start starving these guys off, getting those foods, the processed foods and everything out of your diet. If you can start to it's hard because you have to override your brain, because your brain's like, feed us, and you're like trying to override that. But if you can get past that hump and start to grow the guys that like the full variety of vegetables and all of your full array of color, the rainbow of color in your fruits and vegetables, if you can start and, your good fats and all your healthier foods, like get past that hump and grow these guys, well, suddenly these guys are driving this show, and they're like, feed us, feed us, feed us. And you will see that your cravings can change. You can actually start to like things, get those probiotics, your kimchi and your sauerkraut and your kombucha and all that yumminess. So once you can shift that, then you can change your cravings. And these are the gut flora that are more mood balancing and calming, pro health, anti-inflammatory. So just know that like you can get there. If you feel like, you can't eat a vegetable ever, if you feel like you're never going to be healthy, like it takes time. But here at Ray of Hope, that's what we're going to work on doing. We're going to help you figure out what foods are best for you, what the best diet plan for you is, because not everybody should be on the same diet, right? Not the same foods. Like figure out what's best for you and your body. And we're going to help restore your gut and get you healthy literally from the inside out.